are now tuned in to the Lineman Lounge, the world's thickest sports podcast, with your hosts, Mike and Evo.
¿Cómo están, bitches? This is the Lineman Lounge. I'm Mike. That is Evo. We're going to switch sides here in just a second. I had to bounce out of the room while the video was starting, but it's Friday night, and we're going to give you guys some information on wide receivers. This is a stacked wide receiver class. We had MLB fucking opening day yesterday. Caitlin Clark might be playing in the big three, but man, I'm pumped. We got a big show. Evo, my man, week is over. How you doing?
Doing well, man. Had today off, so I was doing some house chores and stuff like that. I guess the government recognizes Good Friday, apparently, for all of you Christians out there. For me, it was a good day for housework. So, and some Buffalo Wild Wings. Yeah, had that for a little late lunch. But yeah, I'm doing good, brother. We are less than a month away from the draft. I'm getting super excited. I'm doing mock drafts left and right. I probably do a couple each night where I just start to throw in different like variables for myself to see like maybe this could happen, maybe that could happen, blah blah blah. Obviously posted one on the channel and up on the web page in a readable format. So for anyone that wants to check that out, Evo's 1.0 mock draft is out there. Potentially more to come from me, and definitely more to come from boys here at the Lineman Lounge. We're going to be doing a mock draft as well very shortly. So yeah, super excited for that. Pro days are just kind of finishing up, so football is not dead yet. It's still in full swing going, and all the rumors are coming out. Weird pictures of quarterbacks' arms looking like they're AI photo.
I thought it was an AI photo. Apparently that isn't a true to life
I can't get
his elbow.
I don't know. Like, I still don't know for sure, because you have doctors coming out and being like, well, this is what this is, and it's actually not a problem. And then him coming out and being like, stop the cap. To me, it still looks like a AI photo. Someone was like, give Jaden Daniels a fucked up elbow. And like,
boom, got it.
And it's also, why are people just now finding this photo from when he was playing in the college season and bringing it up as a problem? He had a pro day and everything. Like, where are the pictures and photos of the elbow if it's a problem from then? I don't know.
Sense.
It is we use the term silly season quite a bit. There's a lot of silly seasons in the NFL.
Where fucking motherfuckers are lying left and right. There's smoke screens everywhere. Apparently there's a lot of dudes who suck at football who maybe should fall in the draft of teams that are picking a little later.
Yeah, that's the funny part, is that these teams that, a lot of these false reports and bullshit stories and stuff that come out, they more or less are coming from squads out there that have hopes of getting this person later in the draft than they would have originally gotten them. So it's like you're kind of tainting a player for the hopes to get that tainted player. Like, if the players only knew where the scuttlebutt was coming from, they'd probably be like, ah, fuck, I have to go play for the motherfucking New York Jets because they said that I've got a dick that's broken in half.
That would be tough. That would be tough. But yeah, guys, if you want to check out that mock draft, go ahead and go over to the No Sleeves Network. You can watch the video. You can read the analysis. Evo did a great job with that. That's up. I just did a new blog as well about Major League Baseball on opening day, which happened yesterday. So let's go ahead and transition. Let's get the show started. Let's talk some baseball. Yeah, yesterday was opening day, and I didn't get to watch fucking hardly any baseball until much, much later in the day. I had to convince Amber, our beautiful producer, my wife, that I needed to buy MLB TV to watch every team for the entire season because I couldn't watch any baseball on opening day. I don't understand what Major League Baseball is, what they think they're doing, but this TV package thing is all fucked up. It doesn't make any goddamn sense. And we were talking before the show, man, like you were kind of a passive fan of baseball before, but now it's even pushing you farther away with the way MLB is marketing or not marketing themselves.
Yeah. If we look at like the basic economics of it, like supply and demand on the sports like football, where you are in a limited season, and it's because it has to be, it's such a physically demanding sport with lots of injuries and stuff like that. But on such a limited season, it's going to drive you to watch every single game. When you get down to sports like baseball and hockey, NBA to some extent, you can be maybe not necessarily a passive fan isn't the right word, but you can be a lot more passive with making sure you watch every single
Your
game.
watch frequency. You don't have to catch every week because there's 162 of them, or there's 82 of them, or
Yeah, and so I could see in the past catching a game a week of baseball and stuff like that. And it normally wasn't too difficult, even if I was somewhere uh, in the country outside of my normal market. Like I could find a way to watch it. Never illegal stream it, of course, because that's terrible. But
no, we don't do that.
yeah, we don't do that here. But that being said, like there was always a way to kind of try to find the game and watch here or there. And honestly, baseball is just a slower sport in general as it's going through the 9 innings. So it's easier to kind of almost have on as background noise. I remember growing up in high school, 3-4 nights out of the week, I'd be at a buddy's house and we would have the game on in the background while we're playing pool or playing poker or something like that, or just bullshitting in general. We had it on, but it was a passive paying attention, not even necessarily like super hardcore into it unless the game was really good. And as the years have gone on, it seems like with other sports, we have gotten tons of different new opportunities in order to watch and have fandom with it, be able to feel like you're connected to your team a lot more. And along with that, we have the rise of these streaming services, people cutting the cord, getting rid of cable. And now you have things like NFL, who is partnered with YouTube TV, and you can watch YouTube TV anywhere on your phone if you have it. And yes, you're paying for it, but you might not be paying for cable. It's easy to have access to it. You might have to pay a little bit, but it's easy to have access. Baseball feels like they have just kind of dug their heels in it and stuck with what they have gone with in the past, and that model doesn't work. And now it's to the point where you have an open day yesterday, and you have, big time fans can't watch the games of their teams that they want to watch. They don't, NFL, I can watch a football game every Sunday. It might not be my team if it's out of market or something like that, but I can definitely watch a football game. And as a football fan, that's good for me.
And you can do that on Thursday, and you can do that on Monday. Later in the season, you can do it on fucking Saturdays.
Yeah. And as a baseball fan, not even a fan of a team necessarily, but as a baseball fan, to be blocked out from being able to watch the game on opening day, one of the biggest days in baseball, it feels like MLB is just failing at marketing. They're failing at promoting the sport that's already having issues with fan bases. And it just seems like a complete and utter failure by the MLB to promote their sport and keep it with the times.
Yeah, it really is. And that's the thing is that MLB doesn't, they have some small national contracts, like they have the ESPN game of the week or whatever, but that's small things and there's so much baseball to be consumed that they really need to update their model. And I think the perfect model that they could use would be what MLS did. MLS is not a popular sport. Major League Baseball is way more popular than MLS, but MLS partnered with Apple TV. And now you can go and watch every single MLS game through Apple TV as long as you have an Apple TV subscription. So it's a two-prong approach. Like you're helping Apple TV in a partnership because they're getting more subscribers if they're fans. And then your fans can watch every fucking game. They can consume all that content. You'll get more interaction. Like that drives people into the fucking stadiums. Like that is a perfect model, and MLB is not using it when they really should. Maybe it's not Apple TV. Maybe it's, I think they have some stuff with not Paramount. What's the other one? Peacock. They have games on Peacock and shit like that. They could do that. They could just partner with them and make it a permanent thing. But you have to go get a separate app, MLB.TV. However, if that game is technically in your market, the game you want to watch, you're still blacked out from watching that game on MLB TV. So somebody, and I just read a tweet on Twitter about it, or on X about it. Somebody who lives in Louisiana is technically classified as being in the Houston market by MLB, and that's 6 hours away. So they can't watch the Houston fucking Astros.
Yeah.
Because it's blacked out, because that's technically their market. It's all fucked up. They need to get this fixed. I want more goddamn baseball on the TV, but I have MLB TV now. I have fucking Bally's, which is also a travesty because I have the cable service. Spectrum to get Bally's. Bally's, if you have the app, they won't let you just stream the games on their own. It's asinine. Give me more fucking baseball, man.
Yeah, they're already making insane amount of money off of like ad revenue and things like that, and those partnership deals and stuff in general. Like it feels like they are just really trying to pass the problem down to the fan. And at the end of the day, it's not easy for the fan to watch the game anymore. It's not just becoming cost prohibitive, but it's access prohibitive. How many times are you as a fan going to say, "Oh, I want to watch the Cleveland Guardians play," and try to pull something up, and once you hit 2 or 3 walls, you're gonna be like, "I guess I'm not watching the game," and move on to something else. It's too easy for that to happen, and you're just going to start to lose fans and have them become more passive because of it. It doesn't doesn't make sense to me.
Doesn't make sense to me either.
Yeah, I was gonna say like VPNs, I guess, are one of the ways to go, but sooner or later they're gonna get wise to VPN usage and jumping locations and things like that. So
I mean, and it's not hard to figure that out. All these fucking sports betting apps have already found the workarounds to figure out VPNs and make sure you can't bet out of state. So the technology is already out there to prevent it. They need to do something. I can't take the lack of baseball coverage. It should be easy to consume like the NFL, like the NBA, but it's not, and it should be. But let's stop bitching about Major League Baseball because I didn't even get in the Rob Manfred. So that's a pretty good day. Let's talk about some other sports though before we start diving into these wide receivers. Kind of interesting news: college basketball, women's college basketball. Caitlin Clark offered $3 million to go play in the Big 3 tournament. She's got to take that opportunity, right?
yeah, absolutely. I don't see why you wouldn't. I mean, WNBA, for all the good that it does for those athletes, we understand that it's not as big of a market. It's not as big of a sport. Not watched as much for XYZ reasons, and we're not really here to get into that. But at the end of the day, the salaries for those players are going to be nowhere near what they could be for certain things like this Big 3, and for her, just financially and everything involved with it, it makes absolute sense for her to go and do that.
Yeah, you got to. Like, the exposure is going to be great. That's endorsement, marketing, all sorts of other brand awareness stuff outside of the money that you will make from playing basketball, either Big 3 or WNBA. So it just makes sense. And the amount of money that's being offered, I don't know what contracts in the WNBA are getting up to at this point, but I feel like that $3 million for one season is probably very competitive, if not one of the best salaries you can get in the WNBA as well right now. So it
the
makes 100% sense.
highest paid WNBA player currently is Jackie Young, which she has a 2-year, $504,000 contract. Annually, she makes $252,450.
Caitlin, take the fucking money. Take the fucking money and go play in the Big 3. I don't know how many times we can say on this show specifically, take the money. Like, always do it because somebody else will.
Yeah, look, like, I don't make that much per year. I've never made that much per year, but I'm not a professional athlete. Okay. As a professional athlete, to only be making that much, I mean, that definitely sucks. It's great while you're doing it, but how long is a professional athlete career for? Not that long. It leaves them to a point where they do have to consider another career after basketball. And if you're able to go out and get a $3 million deal right off the bat, like, you're talking, I can't do the numbers here. 16 years of that, essentially, off of one contract? If you're making a quarter of $1,000,000 before tax per year as the highest paid WNBA player, or you make $3 million off of one contract.
It's like 12 years.
Yeah. So that could be your entire WNBA career off of just that Big 3 contract.
Yeah, that's insane. You have to do it.
And good for her. I mean,
I hope she does. Yeah.
She's been great for the sport, great for women's basketball in general. It almost feels like it is just as entertaining to kind of watch her journey as the entire men's tournament has been to an extent.
Yeah.
Like she's been almost as big of a story.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, and this is 2 years in the or at least a year and a half, 2 years in the making now. Blew up on the scene last year. Had the dust up with LSU, and then goes in this year. They're, I believe, still in the tournament. Her dad is kind of looks like a prick, but I mean, like that whole thing is a story. The amount of attention that she has drawn, she's been obviously like very demonstrative on the court at times this year. So I would like to see her go and actually get to be a professional. Like go and play in a league and be professional and see how everything turns out. And yeah, it's going to be a really cool story. Her story this year, that arc is been way bigger than the men's arc. Like the men's, cool. That I don't know any of these dudes. Like nobody has drawn my attention. There was the one kid who was shooting the lights out, white Steph Curry, but I don't remember what the hell team he was on.
And even lighter skinned Steph Curry.
Yeah. So, but yeah, good for college basketball. Good for Caitlin Clark. Let's move on.
All righty.
Let's start talking about some fucking NFL. Couple news stories. One, we had a trade today.
Yeah, Hassan Reddick, who was, I mean, it was kind of weird, I guess, to begin with. You know, there was announced that he was allowed to seek trade partners, and that he kind of came out and said, "I didn't even fucking ask for a trade. This is news to me."
Right.
But that trade ended up happening today with the New York Jets. So former Philadelphia Eagle Hassan Reddick is headed over to the New York Jets on a relatively cheap deal. I believe it's for a 2026 third-round pick that could be elevated up to a second-round pick. But Hassan Reddick has quietly been a top 5 edge rusher over the past like 3 years. So he's pretty damn productive. A good get for the Jets, who I believe just lost Bryce Huff in free agency.
Yes.
Who was more of a dedicated pass rusher. So they already had a strong defense, you know, maybe a little bit weaker losing a guy like Huff, but now they should be in just as good of a spot having Reddick.
Yeah, and I like Hassan Reddick, man. He was underutilized a little bit early in his career, I thought, and then when I think it was Chandler Jones went down, really got a chance to fucking shine. Went almost 20 sacks, or maybe did get 20 sacks, and then was able to go parlay that into a nice new contract with the Eagles. Weird the way it ends, but the Jets get a pretty good pass rusher, especially somebody who can get out there in the 3-4, play like a wide 9, like that TJ Watt style, because he's quick coming off the edge. So that's a good get for the Jets. They're going to need as many good gets as they can get.
For sure. All right. Then other football news. I mean, we had pro days going on still. I believe a majority of the top prospect NFL or prospects for NFL quarterback, their pro days have completed as of today. I believe yesterday was Michael Penix and Drake May. So with those being done, all those teams getting to talk to those players, there's still some private workouts that are going to be happening between the players and the team. But once those pro days are kind of complete, that's when we start to get back into potential trade season and stuff like that, where teams are going to really be locking down their big boards. The last little bit of data is coming in. Their big boards will get set. And once those teams have the big boards locked down, that's when they will start to really converse with other teams. Before they've had preparatory talks and things like that. Now they'll be able to kind of go out and say, hey, okay, this is generally where we have a guy. This is where we think we need to move to get him, X, Y, Z. And they can really start having some conversations take place. Typically, after those pro days are done, leading up to the draft is when you will see a lot more of the pre-draft trades actually be executed by teams moving up, specifically to try to get guys like quarterback. So Vikings are on the watch right now.
Oh, yeah. You guys will. I can't see any way that you don't move up. But there is going to be a couple other teams that are going to be vying for that position. You guys should have enough ammo to kind of outbid everybody, but it'll be how much are you willing to part with to get a guy that's probably going to be third, fourth quarterback off the board.
Yeah, that's where we're looking, and it's some of the quarterbacks are fits for the Vikings, some aren't. Same for the other teams that are going out there right now. The main players as far as move ups are the Vikings, possibly the Giants, and the Denver Broncos. The benefit for the Giants is that they are picking at pick 6. So if they want to get there into the top 3, with that jump being much shorter, they should have to give up less. It might make a team more willing to trade down with them because uh, they won't be losing out on some of the top end talent by moving down. The Denver Broncos, they don't have a ton of draft capital in order
But
to
they
move
got
up right
players they're
now.
trying to fucking get rid of.
That's where it kind of comes into play is that not only can the Broncos give up their first this year and potentially future firsts, but they do have some interesting trade bait as far as players, specifically looking at Pat Surtain. He's probably the biggest one that they're going to dangle out there as a potential trade option in order to try to move up in the boards. And then, of course, you have the Vikings who, already have been aggressive in getting that second first round pick. Teams value first round picks in the year that you are drafting more than futures. So that's where I think the Vikings do probably have the most draft capital advantage over these other teams. And not to get too far into that, but the owners meetings just took place.
They did.
Vikings owner, co-owner Mark Wilf was on with, I believe, NFL Network, and they asked him about the quarterback situation, and he just was like, "Yeah, we brought in Sam Darnold," and then he's got this real shit-eating grin. He's like,
Yeah, big fucking smirk.
like,
They got a deal probably
like,
close to being done.
we got plans in place," and he's just got a shit-eating grin, like he knows something that he can't say. So it really makes me feel like they probably have a handshake agreement in place and to either get up to like number 3 or something else under their up their sleeve that they've got worked out. So it's very exciting for me. Vikings have never selected a quarterback in the top 10. Our highest quarterback
Really?
selection previously was number 11, Dante Culpepper in 1999, which turned out pretty damn good.
I can tell you that picking in the top 10 all the time for quarterbacks, not great. Not
Yeah.
great at all.
Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah.
But either way, we are, 28 days or something like that from the draft. So you can expect there's going to be a potential for more movement now and more of the silly season stuff kind of coming out with that. But with those NFL owner meetings, we did have some, rule changes that actually did end up taking place. The kickoff rule is that we discussed last week. It is in. There is a slight adjustment to touchbacks. I believe the touchback now goes to the 30-yard instead of the 35-yard line. And then in addition to that,
do you think teams will be willing to give up that extra 5 yards to not allow the return?
I think it's really going to depend. That they're going to test the shit out of this in practice and in the preseason. And depending on how much those returners are really able to get off, they'll be willing to do that touchback.
Just fucking take the extra 5.
And I think we're already seeing the ripple effects of what teams are expecting this to be. Now, in my Vikings kind of area, this offseason, we let our kicker, Greg, aka Craig Joseph, walk, and he's now a member of the Green Bay Packers. Good get for the Packers because he's something like 4 of 19 at Lambeau, so he's going to be good there. Better than Anders Carlson, who was there for them last year, who was terrible. But the Vikings brought in John Parker Romo, who most recently kicked in the XFL, where this rule came from. They signed this guy previous to word coming out about this potential XFL kickoff rule, leading people to believe, the Vikings kind of knew this was going to happen. They're going to bring in an experienced kicker who knows how to do this stuff already. So they might have already been kind of on that train, but there's other teams out there that are making moves that lead you to believe that they are gearing up for this. Cordero Patterson goes and signs a deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's one of the most electric returners out there.
I fucking hate that. I hate that for me.
And for the price of the deal that they got him for, I believe it was a 2-year deal for like $4 million, something like that, which is relatively cheap for a gadget player / returner, where the return could mean a lot this year. And then you have the Kansas City Chiefs going out and signing an amazing rugby player who seems to fit into the mold of the sort of type of returns that you would be doing.
Dude, and have you seen this kid? Like I've seen some of his workouts on the football field. He's a smooth mover. Like this dude can get up and go a little bit.
Yeah, and they didn't just sign him to like a willy-nilly deal. He got a 3-year deal. So I think teams are starting to have a bit of a forward lean, a forward look towards this new kickoff rule, and it's going to make for better or worse, NFL kickoffs are going to be different and probably more exciting this year.
Hell yeah,
Um,
they're gonna be way more exciting.
so it'll
Unless
be interesting to see how the league shifts.
they're gonna be really exciting, unless somebody performs a hip drop tackle during the play, and then all hell's gonna fucking break loose. Because that rule also went into effect. The hip drop tackle has now been banned, so the NFL has banned tackling.
Yeah.
I don't the we've talked about this a couple times. I don't want to belabor this point too much. This is a really bad rule. This play is so subjective. A hip drop tackle is not really trained. It's not taught. You are trying to get a grown man who is an athletic specimen onto the ground. You're not trying to hurt them. This is not a technique that is designed to hurt or do anything. You don't even fucking think about it. You're just like, get on the fucking ground. This rule sucks. It's going to be bad. The Chiefs are going to find a way. This is going to perfectly benefit them late in the season for a playoff run or in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's the one kind of quote that I saw brought up was like, imagine being a safety and all of a sudden Derrick Henry is running at you and you can't hit him high. You can't do this hip drop tackle type thing. You know, what the fuck are you kind of going to do? Now,
You're going to have to torpedo at his knees or find a way to gator roll him.
And that's the thing is that other players have brought this up and they're like, okay, well, we've been asking for years to get rid of guys diving at our knees with their helmet first. That's a legal play. But that's what's scary to the players. I mean, there has been several players who have come out, like Brandon Marshall, some former players who have said, hey, the hip drop tackle, this is going to be opposite of a lot of people's opinion, but it took time off of my career. I got injured because of it, and I'm okay with it being gone. It's all offensive players that have come out and said that, and they're few and far between. A majority of the other players, the players who are still playing, including the NFLPA, are all upset about this. So,
yeah, as it should be.
And getting rid of the hip drop tackle, we all agree here that it is bad. It is bad form. That being said, it is the world that we live in now, and I am not eager to see how the rule is going to be enforced because
it's going to be over enforced.
Yeah, it's way less clear cut as to what a true hip drop tackle is compared to other rules, and it's going to be a lot more subjective for those referees to call it, because you could be taking a guy down and then potentially you end up on your hip and didn't do a hip drop, but now they're calling it that. I don't know. It's
Derrick Henry is a grown man that could literally just take you off of your feet.
Yes.
Without you purposely hip dropping him. That's how strong he is. But it's going to be bad. I'm excited to see this blow up in the NFL's face for the first 2 weeks. And then they'll be like, let's pull the reins back.
You can almost bet that sometime within the season there will be credible reports from a major, Adam Schefter or something like that, that has a league memo that is put out to all the teams giving clarification of some sort that is probably going to loosen things a little bit, bring it back to where it more so should have been. But even then, I don't think they're going to just get rid of the hip drop tackle rule this year because it's not good for the game. Hopefully by next year they will have decided, okay, this is not good, and try to walk it back. But more often than not, that's not the case.
And there is a large contingent of people on the internet, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you go. They're like, well, just fucking get into good position to tackle. Oh, okay. Let me tell the other grown man athlete to just hold up to make sure I can get in a good position to tackle, because he's obviously not trying to beat me to the position. And then if he does, what I should do is just give up.
The same thing comes into play. You're a safety, and safeties are generally a little bit bigger as far as defensive backs, but you have Derrick Henry coming at you. You could line up, be in the perfect tackle stance, try to perform the perfect tackle, and he runs you over to an extent that you're on your hip. Now it looks like a hip drop tackle. You could be in perfect tackling stance, and you just bounce off of him because he is so much bigger than you. There's so many permutations of this where a player trying to do the right thing is going to end up looking like they're doing the wrong thing to an official's eye.
And they're gonna get fucking hurt.
Yes.
That's what nobody wants to talk about. We're gonna save the offensive players, but the defensive players are gonna end up fucking injured.
Yeah, they could end up injured. We could start to see offensively more knee injuries because players are probably going to be taught, hey, you can't chance a tip drop anymore. Put your helmet on his fucking knee. If it bends backwards, it bends backwards. If you hit it from the side and it snaps in half, just like what would happen with a hip drop tackle, so be it. This is what the NFL wants. They're going to be training that. They're going to be training gator rolls. It's going to make certain things more prevalent that are going to cause more offensive injuries, in my opinion.
No, knees are about to be in trouble.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Woo. But all right, let's talk about some fucking wide receivers. We ready to talk about some receivers, or do we got any other NFL news we need to hit real quick?
No, I'm ready to jump in here into the wide receivers, man. And and like we've talked about, this is one of the best, if not maybe for me, the best wide receiver class that I have seen in such a long time. We're obviously not going to be able to go over every single player this year. How many guys do you have notes or that you want to talk on specifically?
I have 9 because I had to do the big three. The big three where there's no way we can't talk about them because there's going to be conversations about who's going to be the number 1 pick at this point based on pro days, lack of workouts, and all of that. A couple of interesting prospects that I think are worth a look. A couple of guys that I do not like that are starting to get a lot of run. And then I got my one dude, my 3-cone warrior that I got. You know I love that 3-cone drill.
I do know you love that. So what I'm going to kind of do here, because I've done a lot of work on a lot of these players, I have a list here of 25 guys who I think could see their way into the 3rd round or higher. And going to be a lot of the focus. There's a bunch of guys, if you look on other lists, that are going to be listed that higher than these players I have, and I just don't have them nearly as high. Or some of the guys that are lower on my list that are being seen as, day 2 players, 2nd round, stuff like that I don't necessarily agree with. But I'm just going to list off a whole bunch of names here. And again, look, like I said, 25 guys that I feel like could be the 25th guy on this list in other years could be a 2nd round pick. All right. A lot of these guys are just going to be pushed down boards because there's so many good players here.
God, yeah.
And so don't expect that this is exactly like my top player to my 25th player. So a lot of these guys also will play into positions, certain guys are slot, things like that. But just listing off names here, we have Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, Brian Thomas Jr., Adonai Mitchell, Roman Wilson, Xavier Legette, Lab McConkey, Ricky Pearsall, Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, Malachi Corley, Troy Franklin, Jalen McMillan, Xavier Worthy, Jermaine Burton, Jamari Thrash, Malik Washington, Brendan Rice, Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, Devontae Walker, Jacob Cowing, Aeneas Smith, and Taj Washington. 25 guys, 25 names that some of those guys will probably end up falling 4th, 5th round, things like that. But still, I think that in other drafts, they're absolutely higher. In this draft, I could see any of these guys being, no later than a 3rd round pick as far as their actual talent out there. So with that, let's jump in these top 3 and get into those.
We got to talk the top 3, man.
These top 3, I don't see any way that these top 3 get out of the top 10 picks.
I don't think so either, because this is the top end of this draft is the best that I've ever seen for sure. Because you have 3 legit number 1 guys, and I don't think that there is a miss in any of the 3.
Right.
Then you have 2 to 3 more that are for sure 1st round picks that can become ones, but are maybe not a 1 right to start with.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the common trope that gets thrown around with this, is that Malik Neighbors is a number 1 wide receiver in a draft and a top 5 pick if he isn't in a draft with Marvin Harrison. And then you
Yep.
can say that exact same statement about Roma Dunze is probably a top 5 pick in any other
Yep.
draft that doesn't have Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison in it. And you already have people, and this has been a rumor for a little while. A lot of teams have Malik Neighbors higher than Marvin Harrison, and some
Yep.
teams have Roma Dunze higher than Malik Neighbors, and things like that, because these guys aren't all the same type of receiver. I got pro comps for all of them, and depending on what system they go into, it makes sense why one guy might be rated higher than the other. That doesn't mean that they're more talented, like they're just a better fit for your system. We truly have these top 3 guys, some of the best wide receiver prospects coming out in such a long time, that it's great for a year if you need a wide receiver. And within those top 10 picks, we absolutely have a bunch of teams that need wide receiver. And outside of the top 10, we got teams that probably would be willing to move if any of these guys start to fall towards the bottom end of the top 10 to move up and go and get them.
All right, let's talk Marvin Harrison. Fuck, this kid is so good, man. He's the best receiver in college football, and he has been for 2 years, in my opinion. I know that there's some contention. I don't think that Marvin Harrison will be the number 1 receiver off the board. I think that what Malik Neighbors has done during this draft process has probably elevated him, and Marvin Harrison not doing anything is going to maybe rub a team or two the wrong way, and there will be a flip at the top. But I believe that Marvin Harrison is the best receiver, and he's the best route runner in this draft. I don't think there's any comparison what he can do in his routes, and his body control is ungodly. You give him a ball on the sidelines over across the middle, he is always going to have his body in the fucking right position. Excellent against zone coverage. He knows he's a pro already. He learned from his old man. He knows the soft spots in the zone. And a lot of these guys, they'll beat you in man. They can run past you in college. The nuance of finding the holes in the pockets in zone, not every one of these guys has that. Marvin Harrison has it in spades, though. I don't want to keep going. What do you have on Marvin that I don't have here yet?
I mean, I like Marvin Harrison a lot. I think that he is probably 1A on my board of wide receivers in this draft. As far as him not going being the first wide receiver off the board, I would say that he will be the number 1 receiver off the board unless a trade up happens at number 4. I think that Marvin Harrison is probably like the perfect fit there for the Arizona Cardinals. And if he's there at pick number 4 and the Cardinals stick there, that they'll take him. That being said, if the Cardinals move out of that spot, now you're looking at a team is going to be moving into that position for a quarterback. Now Marvin Harrison has dropped down to pick 5 with the Chargers, and the Chargers have other needs other than just wide receiver. Wide receiver might seem from the outside like the biggest need that team has, but they also are a Jim Harbaugh-led team. They're going to be a lot more run first. They might prioritize an offensive lineman like a Joe Alt or something there. So then you start seeing 6 Giants. Are they going to be players for a wide receiver? Absolutely. And then it starts to get into, well, maybe a Malik Neighbors makes more sense for them, or Roma Dunze makes more sense for them with their system. They already have like a Jalen Hyatt who's kind of a burner, and we don't know what's going to really happen with Darren Waller, because I think there's still potential that he could retire. There was those rumors out there that he was possibly had already inked retirement paperwork, and the Giants weren't putting it in yet because they're hoping to talk him into coming back. Like, there's a potential that Marvin Harrison might not be that top overall wide receiver taken.
Yeah.
But I think that if the Cardinals are there and they stick, I think that he's their guy.
I would imagine that he is, but I don't know if they do stick. I think that they are still a long ways away and may try to continue to get draft capital and build that team. Because they're way farther away than Marvin Harrison actually competing down there in Arizona. They're a long ways away from competing. And Malik Neighbors, with the things that he has done over the last, especially his pro day, my God, dude, that was a great showing. Runs 4.38, and the comps. I know a lot of the other people's comps. We'll talk about that in a second. I have him comped as a much different person than I think a lot of people have him at. But let's talk more about Marvin Harrison, because this dude is huge. Like, he's way bigger than his dad. He is 6'3", maybe 6'4". We didn't really get a measurement. 210 pounds.
Yeah, he was listed at Ohio State, I believe, as 6'4", 205.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's somewhere in that range, 6'3", 6'4", 205, 210, somewhere in there. But massive red zone threats. And he's another dude that can go up and get the ball down the field. But inside of 2 years, there's going to be a meme. There's going to be some quarterback, whatever team he goes to, whoever their quarterback is, it's going to be him just slinging the fucking ball up into the air, basically blind, saying, fuck it, Marvin's down there somewhere. That we're going to see those inside of 2 years. I have no fucking doubts.
Yeah, and that's as far as my pro comparison. None of these are ever perfect. I see Devontae Adams type of level for him, where Devontae is kind of good at everything. He's good down the sideline. He's good over the middle. He's good in the red zone. He's a big body dude, and he is one of those guys that you throw it up in his general direction, and he can probably come down with it. I see a lot of that out of him. Good speed, height, weight. He's got everything kind of that you want. Good hands. Now the question again kind of comes into play with Marvin Harrison not participating in the combine or his pro day. How much is that going to hurt him? To an extent, I think it can, but also from his camp, they viewed him as the number one receiver in this draft class the whole time.
Yeah.
The only thing that doing that workout, like the chance of it bettering him is there, but the chance of it hurting his stock is much
way higher.
And so I think it was a calculated decision by them to say, hey, we're not going to participate just because it could hurt his stock in some way. Regardless, he's going to be a top 10 pick. So it's not anything to worry about. But if you go out there and you have a terrible pro day or something like that, then you're the third wide receiver off the board, maybe. And now that's a problem. I think that's why he probably didn't participate. Maybe there's something else underlying that we don't really know about. I'm sure that we'll have weird rumors about that here over the next 2-3 weeks. But I still think that he's the number one in most teams' books. But I think that Malik Neighbors and his pro day and combine stuff has elevated him to where he is much closer to being neck and neck with Marv.
Yeah. My pro comp on Marvin Harrison Jr., and I know this is a comp that Roma Dunze gets, but I think it's more apt for Marvin Harrison. Larry Fitzgerald. Young Larry Fitzgerald is Marvin Harrison Jr.
I've heard that one too as well with Marv.
Yeah, man.
Is Larry Fitzgerald. And part of that, I'll say, is because I've had a lot of Arizona Cardinals podcasts and stuff pop up on my YouTube feed. I don't know if it's they're tracking that I'm a football fan and then I'm also in the Arizona area.
Right.
And we got Joe Rockstar popping in, Ayuk under contract. I wouldn't be surprised if Ayuk is traded day one of the draft. Just saying. AKA Mike Tomlin as a player. But going back to the Cardinals podcasts, the stuff that I've seen out of them, I think is, man, I don't want to completely trash on Cardinals and Cardinals fans, but I think that they are sipping the Kool-Aid a little bit. They are saying he is the next Larry Fitzgerald out there, which he absolutely could be. And they look at him being a lock to number 4 as well, if they stick there. But they also apparently have completely written off the potential for the Vikings to trade with anyone else other than them. They won't entertain the idea of the Vikings trading up to 3 with the Patriots. And if you take Robert Kraft's statements at the owners' meeting as anything, it sounds like they are open for business for trades.
For business, yeah.
But the Cardinals fans also are they've had 1 year of Monty Ossenfort and believe that he is the Messiah. And they're pretty sure that he's going to rape any team that wants to come up. Most of them are saying we won't even talk. They literally have said on their podcasts, we won't even talk about your trade compensation unless you're offering Minnesota both your first this year, your first next year, your first in 2026, and more. And that's not going to happen when potentially they would be taking the 4th quarterback off the board at that point.
Right.
Now, if we're talking the 2 firsts this year and next year's first, that's probably
3 ones. 3 ones is the most I think they could get.
Yeah. And that is probably a conversation. But the reality is that if the Vikings are going to trade 3 first-round picks, it's probably going to be with the Patriots. And they might have to trade 3 ones and then a 3rd next year or something like that, since we don't have another pick until the 4th this year. But then when talking to most NFL experts about a trade with the Cardinals, if that first round pick in 2025 is involved, the Cardinals are probably going to have to kick something back, a second or a third rounder to the Vikings.
100%.
Because if you go off the Rich Hill trade chart, which these trade charts obviously aren't perfect,
You like
but
this Rich Hill trade chart.
well, it updates yearly based off of trades that have happened. So the whole talk of quarterback tax, that actually starts to get factored into that trade chart a little bit. And there's also been other analysis that say that there isn't actually a quarterback tax, that the tax for first round pick trades and stuff like that just kind of goes up in general every year, just like regular economics and the cost of the dollar. But by those charts, the Vikings have already succumbed point wise. They have more than they need with 11 and 23. But the Cardinals will probably want more, and that's tenable. So they're talking 11-23 and a future third as being probably around the pick compensation. And then if that future first was actually to be thrown in, then the Cardinals are having to give up quite a bit more, potentially another pick this year that the Cardinals would have to give back to the Vikings. I think that the Cardinals fans might be drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit with the trade potential there as far as what they're going to get out of the trade, because while there are going to be other teams potentially bidding, again, you have the Broncos who, if they're trading to pick four for the fourth quarterback, if they give up, their cornerback and their first round pick this year, that's going to be it. And the Giants, a third round pick this year, maybe is what they would be probably pushing in to move up 2 spots. They're not going to be getting a whole lot in return. And then on the flip side, the Cardinals are not getting potentially their top option in Marvin Harrison Jr. So, it
Which
would
if
be
they trade
easier
out of
for
that
them.
spot, they probably won't be.
Right. So it would be easier for them in that spot to either just stick and take Marv or work out a deal with the Vikings where you are getting more first round picks. Now, the Cardinals are the only team other than the Vikings this year with 2 first round picks. They do have another pick at 27. And the talk is that if the Cardinals want to trade with the Vikings,
if they trade down, then they'll go back up and get a Malik Neighbors, or they'll go and get a Roma Dunze.
right.
And that works out perfectly fine. And it makes sense to me. But
Yeah, that's the talk is that
they're getting 4+ first round picks is asinine. What they should do is take Marv, but I don't know if they will, because Malik Neighbors, man, like I've been saying, you said he's 1B. He's my 1B too. Because if this is any other draft, Marvin Harrison's not in it. Malik Neighbors is the clear-cut best offensive fucking weapon in any draft over the last couple of years, except for maybe Jamar Chase, 4 years ago?
Yeah, and look, like Justin Jefferson, he was the 5th wide receiver taken in that draft class. There was no talk about him being what he is now. Like, he was seen as a slot-only guy despite his size and things like that. That's why he dropped where he did and was the 5th receiver off the board. But, obviously guys can turn out and become great like JJ did. But when we're just talking about what we have available to us today, Malik is an insane offensive talent. And I feel a little bit bad when we talk 1A, 1B, Marv and Malik, because it sounds like we're putting Rome down a little bit. It's just
No,
the
fucking
nature of
Rome
this
is
thing.
1C.
Rome is amazing. So
Rome is the first receiver off the board in the last couple of years as well, probably, if he's able to come out.
Yep. And so going back to Malik Neighbors, the comp that I have for him, which I don't know if you agree with or not, I've got Antonio Brown. Like, I think that prior to the head injury, he reminds me of AB, where he is a weapon all over the field. Not as big as a Marvin Harrison, where you can just throw the ball up to him and expect him to come down with it. But the guy is a yak monster, and it can be used basically in the slot, outside, wherever you want. Like, he is just such a dynamic weapon.
Yeah, so I see him as like a slot and a Z. I mean, he could go play the X. He can play all 3 spots, but I'd rather see him in motion or off the ball and really eat. But like, my pro comp, and you might find this weird, because I've seen a lot of Depos and other guys. He reminds me of DeAndre Hopkins, the way he runs routes, how he uses his body to shield the ball from defenders, and is an excellent away from the body hands catcher. Like, DeAndre Hopkins did that better than anybody. You could squeeze a ball in anywhere to D-Hop because he had the best body position you could possibly get, and his hands are strong as fuck. And Malik Neighbors has both of those things in spades, but he adds that extra element and can beat you after the catch as well.
Yeah, and why I would be off on the Debo comps with him and stuff like that is that Debo isn't as good of a receiver.
Agreed. I 100% agree, man.
There's two guys in this class that I've got comparisons with Debo with. One of them that I believe you already know about, but two guys I think that are Debo-esque in their ability. And Malik wouldn't be one of those guys. Malik is and that's not to say Debo isn't a good receiver. Malik is just a different breed.
Yeah. So my last sentence here is he's been compared to Debo because I keep seeing it, but I think he's a better pure receiver.
Yeah. And that's why I feel like AB works for me both in size comparison and what they can do on the football field, where AB can do the end arounds and different things like that, a little bit more gadgety stuff than a Debo or that a Debo does, but he's also primarily a receiver, a top flight receiver, and that's Malik can do anything.
Anything, man. He can play all three spots.
Yeah. All right. And then that brings us down to Rome Odunze, 6'3", 215, had a great year up there at Washington. He feels like the odd man out when we're talking about this, but
I know,
again,
he shouldn't.
Fantastic possession style receiver, good on the boundaries, really good over the middle. And my comp for him is Keenan Allen. I feel like he is Keenan Allen, maybe a little bit better athleticism. And I think that's probably a pretty common one that gets put out there, but I just see a lot.
I have the other Chargers wide receiver as his comp, and then Mike Williams.
Mike Williams makes sense too. That makes sense too. Yeah, I love me some Rome. There's been a lot of talk about could the Bears get Rome with pick number 9, and I think that they could potentially.
Maybe, yeah.
And they're like, but they just brought Keenan in. Wouldn't it be the same? Well, Keenan's there on a 1-year deal, and you're basically having Rome
potentially drafting the guy. Yeah.
With being who Keenan is, and so who better to learn from, than that. So I think that he's definitely still a possibility, an option on the board.
Now, I do think that he could learn something from Keenan Allen because Rome is not as good as a route runner as Keenan Allen is. Like, Rome is excellent, great fucking football player, but he is incredible in fucking 50-50 balls, jump balls. He has crazy long arms. Like, his contested catch rate is insane, which is why I immediately think Mike Williams. But, like, if he gets to sit back behind a Keenan Allen, get a little bit more refined in his route running, Rome could be the best receiver out of this class.
Yeah. I think that there's a potential for Rome, especially with the situations that he potentially could go in. We're looking at really picks 5 through 9 here. Some of those teams with the dearth of talent at wide receiver and the amount of volume that he's going to get could end up with the best rookie season out of these receivers, out of the top 3 that we're talking about here.
If Marv goes to Arizona, he could have a pretty good year just because Kyler is excellent in the scramble drill, and there's not a better wide receiver in this entire draft at uncovering and getting back open for his quarterback than Marvin Harrison. He's the best scramble drill guy that you could ask for in that scenario, and Kyler thrives on that shit.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. It's just they also have Michael Wilson there. They've got their tight ends starting to show out last year, so they have other options to throw to. Whereas if a Rome goes to a Giants, he's got next to no one to compete with on the wide receiver side. Like, yes, they have Jalen Hyatt, but Hyatt is just like a straight line burner type of guy. It's a different type of receiver. And then after that, they really don't have anyone of note that would be catching the ball, whereas Rome is gonna get the volume there, in my opinion.
I agree.
All righty. So after that, we have a little bit of a drop off, but a guy who's been rising for me is Brian Thomas Jr., and I think he's been rising on a lot of people's boards. He was seen as more of a late first round pick, and now we're seeing him after the way he's performed both at the combine, the pro day. Yeah, that's and I've seen some more aggressive boards that have him up towards pick 10 and stuff like that, pick 12, especially if you have a team like the Bears who, while they are picking at 9, I absolutely think that they're going to be looking to potentially trade down with that pick just because the Bears have 4 picks in this draft. So 2 of them in the first round. And then after that, you're starting to get really lean. So they could try to move down with that 9th pick up some extra capital and still be taking a top end guy. defensively or offensively. And a Brian Thomas, they're going to miss out if they move out of the top 10 on a Rome Odunze for sure. Rome might not even be there at 9. But if you drop back, 5 picks or so, you're going to have a Brian Thomas available. He's going to start to become a guy in that range that you go out and get and just provide another weapon for Caleb because Caleb's going there.
Yeah, he's for sure going there. There's no other way around it. So the thing I have on Thomas here, man, great deep threat. That's what he does. He takes the top off of a defense. Not a great route runner, but like he is a dude that will get on top of a defense. He does a pretty good job stacking corners, so he can go ahead and win that. If you need a guy that can do that for you, Brian Thomas would be the best option in this draft. There are some guys in this draft that are very, 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 very fast. I don't necessarily love all of those players, but if you want a true deep threat who I think can actually improve your team, this is the best one you can get as a pure deep threat.
Yeah, that's the thing with Brian Thomas to me is that, he was in a lights out LSU offense there where you have Malik Neighbors as well. And so what he was not necessarily pigeonholed into, but what he did really well and what he was utilized most with was that deep ball, that long speed. And he showed off that speed at the combine. I think he probably has a lot more tools in his bag and capability as a receiver that it just wasn't asked of him. And he has to be coached up on it a little bit. And so I think we could be seeing more of a well-rounded receiver than some might see, because again, we'll bring up the Jalen Hyatt guy from last year. He's kind of seen as the one-dimensional. He is your deep ball guy. And Brian Thomas absolutely is deep ball guy, but I think he's got more potential, more to his game than he was really allowed to do there at LSU. And part of that is that system. Again, Justin Jefferson coming out of there, he was only asked to do kind of one thing, and that was play out of the slot, and we didn't get to see anything else. And now he goes to a professional team that allows him to use all of his skills. You see that he is way more than just that slot style receiver. And I think the same thing is going to be able to be said with Brian Thomas, is that Malik Neighbors is kind of your do everything guy. You're going to be our shining star with the deep ball, but he's got more in him. Now, what I'd like to see his drop rate go down a little bit. Like we've seen some drops that I didn't really like, but for me, like his floor is a T. Higgins. But I've seen and it's extremely bullish, but like I think that he has potential to get closer to a Randy Moss if he starts to flesh out his skills as a true full wide receiver. I don't think anyone will be Randy Moss.
Fucking name to bring him up.
But with his speed, his lankiness, like his size overall, like he's gonna or has the potential to be that sort of a receiver in the NFL. I don't think he'll ever be that. He would be a Dollar General version of Randy Moss, but still, I'm taking that over a lot of guys. And Brian Thomas, he's actually my last guy that I think is a true lock as a first round. And once we get beyond him, we're talking about a bunch of guys that could really be sweet for a certain team, or a team could be really high on them because they fit their system well. But we got a bunch of guys that are potential first round talents that'll be mixed in there more towards the later part of the first round into the beginning of the second round. So who do you got as like a next guy or next couple group of guys here that are potential first round guys for you?
Oh gosh. Guy at the end of the first round that I think could squeak in. He had a pretty good run, Xavier Legette.
Okay. He's one of my favorite receivers in this class.
Like I think that he is a guy that compares really well to Debo, more so than a lot of the other guys that we've seen. I still think he needs to improve his route running, but I don't know that he's going to ever be that pure type of receiver. This is a guy that you want to have move around. You want him lining up in different positions. I think that he has a lot of ability to be incredibly exciting. All the pieces aren't there yet, but people see what Debo can do and the way you can construct an offense to utilize his skills. And everybody's going to be very excited about Xavier Legette for that.
He's got a really interesting story as well, like an off the football field story. If you're unaware of it, it's something that, I'm not going to get deep into today, but lost his mom at an early age, lost his dad at an early age, ended up going to South Carolina, where they ended up having a coaching change and things weren't going well. And he decided to stick by that team that, stuck by him through tough times. And they had Spencer Rattler come in, which we'll probably talk about him a little bit more next week. But
Next week,
they had one receiver there. That the only guy that Spencer was basically throwing to was Xavier Legette. And you kind of saw where Spencer would throw to him when he was double, triple covered and stuff like that. And somehow Legette would still come out with the ball. He was one of those guys that he's a heart guy. He's a passion guy. He's very loyal, obviously, with his team. But he is a yak monster. He's not going to have the great long speed or anything like that, but he's muscled up, kind of a bigger dude. And he is great across the middle. I love him on those slant routes and things like that, or 10-yard ins and things, because he's going to be the type of guy that's got bigger running back size, decent hands, and he's going to be able to power through stuff. He's not necessarily going to make guys miss, but he's going to be able to power through arm tackles or anything that a lot of these defensive backs are going to try to put on him, because he's a bigger receiver, more stout, I should say. And that's the Debo comp is definitely there for me. I have one guy that I kind of like even more closer to a Debo style player, but that's where I kind of see that from Xavier Legette is almost a mix of Debo and an AJ Brown. It's kind of scouting the helmet at that point, but like we're at that comparison. But I do see a little bit of that out of him.
I do have a couple of worries about Legette, because we've seen these guys who are supposed to be like the next Debo, these bigger body wide receivers, guys who are a little tighter in the hips, who really have not done much of anything. Like Traylon Burks, like that's a dude that very much in that same mold. So it's not like you just see that guy and it instantly works out. You can't say that, okay, well, he's like Debo. Debo's special. I think Legette can be that way, but that comp is a dangerous comp, because those types of receivers do not always pan out.
And my comp with that is almost less about he looks like Debo, but I think that he fits into a Debo role really well. So, but yeah, for what it's worth, Debo was kind of a very unique receiver when he really broke through. And so teams have been kind of looking for other guys that could fill that unique sort of role that a Debo does. And I think that he's got the skill set where he could fill that sort of a role well with the team. All right, who else do you got here? And that's, for me, I think Legette is a sneaky first-round pick that people kind of have penciled in as a second-round guy, but I do like him as being a late first-round guy that could sneak up there. And I'm pretty sure I had him in my mock going there in the first round as well.
Late first-round guys, man.
Oh, also, Xavier Legette, if you haven't listened to him talk, go just watch a YouTube video and interview.
I know the man's voice. He's got country in him. That boy's got a whole lot of country in him. Yeah. I love it. Mm-hmm. Because I love when there's an accent and you just don't fucking expect it. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And it's a hard accent.
Oh, yeah.
Real country.
Yes. Oh, man. I don't know. I'm getting close to my guys that are very, very fringe. I don't know.
Here's
who
one
else
that
do you have that are right there around that first round range?
Well, I'm going to give you a name, and I want to kind of get how you feel about him, because I've seen him work into late first round in some mock drafts, definitely in second round. And that's out of Florida State, Keon Coleman, 6'4", 215, big guy. What are your thoughts on Keon?
Huge. He's huge, but he doesn't have the speed that I would like to back up any of that. Huge place, like he's strong. He's big, strong fucking receiver. But I don't know if he can separate. Like he's not a Jesus Christ, what the hell? Receiver up in. He's not a DK Metcalf. He does not remind me of a DK Metcalf. He does not have that explosive playmaking ability. But he is a guy that you can go out, throw him up the ball, and he'll go out and get it. More of a Mike Evans style, where he's a pretty decent route runner. But Mike Evans is so fucking good. Like he's so far beyond where Keon is that I believe that would be his ceiling, would be a Mike Evans. But I don't necessarily love that type of receiver. I like big body receivers, But if you're going to be that guy, you have got to be willing to go more across the middle. Where are you at on Keon?
I hate him.
Yeah,
I hate him. I hate where people have him mocked and stuff like that. Like I said, I've seen him work late in the first round to like the Chiefs and stuff like that. I do not like it.
He's a slow wide receiver or a fast tight end. Like he's a tweener.
Makes me get Kelvin Benjamin vibes real bad.
Yeah.
The thing with Keon is that, like, if you look at his contested catch rate, 33.3% contested
not
catch rate.
Good.
This is the thing. Also, I don't like him off the field. I feel like he wants to be like a TikTok star or famous and stuff like that. But that's neither here nor there. I think that he could be a little bit of a drama.
We want to be famous,
sure, but I feel like he could be one of those drama diva type guys or something like that. But on the field, all he did was catch contested catches. He could not separate. You brought up the separation stuff. He couldn't separate at the college level in a good passing offense, one that spread the ball around a lot. He could not separate from these guys in college football. And he was able to make a lot of these contested catches because he is just such a bigger guy. You get to the NFL and you're not talking about college level talent. If he couldn't separate at college, he is absolutely not separating in the NFL. You're going to have defensive backs that are going to eat off of that. Like, to me, like, is he a red zone threat target, something like that? Maybe because of his size.
But
I
size.
don't like it. Yeah.
If he really improves his route running, he could be at max, I think, of Mike Evans. Big body guy, not a burner, but he can go and win some catches downfield. But he just, I don't want to bury this kid, but I don't see him as a first round talent. I see other guys that are big as well in this draft. There's a lot of fucking X receivers in this draft that can go out and play out on their own that with decent size that you don't need to spend a first round talent there. I'm trying to not be so harsh. I've been told I sometimes speak a little cavalier when I'm talking about these players, but
like I said, I hate him as a first or second. I have him as a third rounder.
Ooh,
so
that's a long way to drop. Long way to drop.
He probably ends up going day 2, but I don't. To me, in this really good wide receiver class, to me, he's a third round type of guy because he's so limited in what he can do. Can he play as the boundary guy size wise? Sure, but that's like, yeah, to me, it just doesn't translate super well. As far as other guys that I feel like are in the mix for the late first round, there's definitely a handful of names. Not all of them guys that I necessarily like as late first round picks. I feel a little bit better in the second round with them, but guys that'll fit into that range are going to be an Adonai Mitchell out of Texas. Sometimes he looks like he's a true top 15 pick, and then other times he trails off and doesn't look like he should be anything more than a second round guy. He's got the size you want, 6'4", 196 to 200. Didn't really get to work out a whole lot because he's been nursing some injuries. But he's got a lot of potential to be really good, and a team could like that. Ricky Pearsall and Ladd McConkey feel a lot like the same type of player to me, but they're both guys
I have write-ups on both of these fucking dudes.
And I really like both of them as like possession style guys, slot receiver type guys. But I really like both of them. I think that they're going to be like high volume guys. They might not get a ton of yards after the catch and stuff like that, but I can see them getting a lot of catches. Ladd McConkey, with a name like that, you know that if Bill Belichick was still on the Pats.
My fucking write-up is, if Bill Belichick were still coaching if Bill Belichick were still coaching the Patriots, this guy would be selected at 3rd overall and would probably be the best receiver that Bill's ever drafted.
Yeah, like he's gonna fit into the molds of all of his other white receivers.
But he is more Edelman than he is a Wes Welker.
Yes, for sure.
Whereas I believe that Pearsall has some Welker ability.
Yeah,
because that's my 3-cone god this year.
Yeah,
the dude that ran the elite 3-cone was Pearsall, and he looked fucking great at the combine.
Yeah, that's like, honestly, when I look towards the end of the first round, a lot of these guys I'm looking at, I'm thinking of the Chiefs just because they need more receiving help there, obviously, to make usage of Pat Mahomes. Those sorts of guys that are like
fringy. Troy Franklin. How do you feel about Troy Franklin?
He's another guy that I've gotten that list of guys that could go late first round. Troy Franklin, he's definitely leaner than I would like him to be. He reminds me a little bit more of Sky Moore than I would like personally, but I like his speed. He obviously had a lot of production there at Oregon, but Oregon, we'll get into this too with our quarterback comps with, or not comps, but quarterback conversation with like Bo Nix and stuff like that. It was such a short yardage passing game. It was a really tricked up offense. One read, get the ball to a guy, and with his speed, he was able to get that quick separation and then get some yak after it. I think that he's going to be a good receiver, but I don't think he projects to be a number one or an X or anything like that just because of his size. But for a team that's has a really good quarterback, like he could be very productive in a Chiefs style offense or something like that. And that's why, like, again, for better or worse, a lot of these guys, when I look at late first round, like, it's who would the Chiefs be willing to take that could work out well for the Chiefs? And Troy is one of those guys that I got mixed in there. And Roman Wilson is my other name in here. I don't think Roman Wilson gets enough credit, and I ended up having him go with the last pick in my mock draft to the Chiefs because I think Roman Wilson, like my pro comp to him, if he exceeds and hits that top end, is a St. Brown from Detroit. Like that's the type of player that I think he can be. Watching a lot of film now on JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, I bet you
see
are.
Roman Wilson jump out a lot. He's one of the big receivers there, but again, they just were not a volume passing offense. And so because there's less film out there, like there's not a ton of passing film of JJ McCarthy. And then when you have other receivers out there for the Michigan offense, Roman Wilson isn't getting he's probably getting a majority of the catches, but he's not getting all of them. So his numbers are even lower. And despite that, he's still out there getting, 789 yards last year and 12 touchdowns. He's good all over the field, but he doesn't have like necessarily the size that you would want for him to be like a true X. But then we're seeing, Amon-Ra St. Brown go out there and be a phenomenal wide receiver for Detroit in that sort of a system. That's where I kind of think like they need someone, a do-it-all workhorse in a Chiefs style offense that can catch a lot of balls from Mahomes. And then you have another guy in Rashee Rice there who's a little bit more of the longer speed, deeper type of guy that I'd be looking for with Pat Mahomes. So I think that he would round out that offense really well. But I'm a big Roman Wilson fan just from watching a lot of the cut-ups of JJ and what Roman can do.
All right. So we like Troy. I like Troy.
He's on the lower end of my list of guys that would be good for the first round, but I do still have him as a fringe first round.
I got him as fringe first round as well. McConkey I have as a second rounder. I like him. He's got really good capability, but he is very much typecast. He's got to be a fucking slot. Yeah. Maybe you could play him at a Z just because he's off, but he's not going to be able to deal with the press. He just can't. You got to have him off, and you got to have him kind of hidden, but could do a really good job working underneath. Does not make sense to go to a team that has a tight end that sees the ball all the time. So Chiefs, to me, doesn't make sense because they're going to be working the same areas.
Sure.
Now there's Pearsall we brought up as well. I fucking love this kid, man. I think he's going to be a stud.
Yeah.
You send him in the right offense. This kid is going to eat people alive. Everybody knows I love the 3-cone drill. I talk about the 3-cone drill all the time as an elite weapon for wide receivers to separate. This kid ran a 6.64. That's pretty goddamn good. It's not as good as Jackson Smith and Jigba, but it's pretty goddamn good. Roma Dunze, who we very much like and think is an absolute stud, ran a 6.88. So the short area quickness that Pearsall has is absolutely insane. When you watched his on-the-field workout, everything is butter smooth. He looks like a Wes Welker dude, and it's not just because he's white. Like, he runs routes exactly like Wes does. That whip route that he ran at the fucking combine, you cannot run it better than that. So I love Pearsall. Ran well, too. Fucking 4.4s, right?
Gotta pull it up. But, yeah, it was low.
Yeah, so Pearsall I like more than McConkey, but I still would probably expect second-round picks out of both of those guys.
4.41 Um, and I got like McConkey and Pearsall right at like neck and neck, same sort of range. Slightly different players, but I like both of them as high volume guys.
So I got one more guy on here, but the guy I got on here is a guy that I really don't like. Somebody that we haven't talked about, even though that he put on, well, the greatest combine performance ever with the 40. Xavier Worthy. Dude, I don't like this kid at all.
Yeah.
He's fast. He's a straight line runner. He's real fast. If you want to draft this kid because he's so fast and you think he can take the top off of defense, he's going to be typecast. You can't play him out of the slot, and he's not good enough to play at the X to beat a press, any of that. He's got to be a Z. He's got to be off the line to get a free release. So now you pigeonhole into one spot. He does not have a route tree. He just runs deep. Like, there are guys that can be strictly a Z because they don't have the size. Like a Brandon Cooks has eaten people alive in that role. But this reminds me much more of a John Ross who runs real fast but can't get off the line, doesn't separate, and is not a great catcher of the ball either.
Yeah,
So,
he has a bit of a higher drop rate than you would like. The guy will be blown over by a fart. Like, he is pretty fucking damn thin. There's obviously a lot of talk after the combine and him putting up that 40-yard time of being like, oh, this is going to work him up in the first round. But quite honestly, if teams were already evaluating him and didn't already have him as potentially the fastest receiver in this draft, then they weren't scouting him correctly from the get-go. Like, it's not surprising that he ran as good of a 40 as he did. So it shouldn't be elevating him on your board anymore. Like, I like Jalen Hyatt better last year as that deep guy with the speed in general, just because of Hyatt's got better size. But all the things that you talked about, Xavier Worthy, to me, like, he is that late second round guy. He's very much so typecast. No, it doesn't have the route tree. Too many dropped balls for me, and I don't know that he's going to be able to hold up. When you're talking about guys that are thin like this, Devonta Smith was much more developed as a all-around receiver than he was, and we were still super scared.
Devonta Smith was a route runner, though.
We were super scared about his size being an issue, and so far it really hasn't been, to his credit. It hasn't been too much of an issue, but now we're looking at Xavier Worthy, who has had injury issues throughout his career. He's had drop issues, and he's very limited in what he does as a receiver, other than the fact that he's just fast as shit. Yeah.
He's track fast.
Another guy that is kind of talked about in the late first, early second that I'm not a fan of is Devontae Walker. He was the main receiving target there for Drake May at UNC. The guy also has drop issues, like significant drop issues. You saw a lot of that at the Senior Bowl as well, even in his pro day. Like the pro day, I watched the pro day cut-ups. Devontae Walker was dropping balls that he probably should have been catching, and he was wearing shorts. So
the entire North Carolina pro day was not exactly a great showing.
Yeah, it wasn't the best. But he's a guy that I think is rated too high because he does have good speed. And he had more volume there, coming from a good quarterback. But that has elevated him more so than he is actually talented enough to be talked about as that kind of late first type of guy.
I got a guy that I want to know. I'm sure you got something on this kid, and I assume this is the other guy that you comp to Debo. Small school, Malachi Corley.
Yep. Yeah. I'm a fan of Malachi Corley as well. 5'11", 210. He's a smaller guy, but he's another one of those yak monsters. He's really muscled up. And yeah, he's the guy that fits in that Debo role really well over the middle, that sort of stuff. I do like him to be more of a Debo type than Leggett that we talked about earlier. But yeah, super fun receiver. And this is the guy that I think should be a second round pick and very well could be a third round guy. And he's going to be a steal for you if you're getting him in the third round, in my opinion.
All right. Well, buddy, I got nobody else on my list. You got anybody else on your list that you want to hit up before we?
Yeah, I want to give some credit to some names of guys I like. Jalen Polk, wide receiver out of Washington. I think that he showed with Penix that he's a very good number 2 in that sort of a system. I still see him as like a number 3 in the NFL, but a solid possession receiver type of number 3. I've seen a comp of him to Oh no, I can't remember. To me, he's more of like a Josh Reynolds type who just left
Okay.
Detroit and is out there with Denver, where he's 600-700 yard receiver each year. But if you have good receivers on your team that are taking a lot of focus, Jalen Polk is going to be able to make use of that. He stepped in when Jalen McMillan, also from Washington, went down, who I see them as being a little bit more of the same type of receiver. McMillan is a guy that's going to fall because he didn't get to test as much and didn't have as much film out there at the end of the year because he was hurt. But McMillan, I also kind of like as a second or third round guy. Someone that's kind of been flying up boards a little bit for me, and that I actually do really like is Javon Baker out of UCF. He's 6'1", 208. He has that deep speed. He reminds me of like a George Pickens type in some of these. I think that he was very typecast at UCF with the deep ball stuff, but I think he can be a good receiver based on his size and his hands and stuff like that on shorter routes as well. And so we'll be interesting to see him in the NFL and how he's used. Brendan Rice, what are your thoughts on Brendan Rice, the son of Jerry Rice?
Man, it's very rare that the offspring lives up to the greatness of the one before it. Jerry Rice is the greatest receiver of all time. His son, I'm not sure he's that good. I don't have a ton of great things to say other than he's Jerry Rice's kid. What I believe that he will make a squad and be serviceable as a 4 or 5 for a little while. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he has a good route tree, a good route runner, decent with the release. He was the number one receiver there for Caleb Williams, and having a quarterback like Caleb throw to you is going to help out a lot. He's nowhere near as good as his dad or anything like that. He's an average.
That receiver core was so fucking bad, man. Caleb
Yeah.
Williams, and for all the knocks that we have on Caleb Williams or whatever you want to say, he was not helped at all by his fucking weapons and his receiver core.
Yeah. And that's to me, like, I think Rice is an average athlete at best. And that was one of the things with his dad that was seen.
Yeah, his dad was an average athlete.
He just worked his ass off
and knew how to manipulate the player and manipulate the game. Was probably the greatest route runner of all time because he had to be. Mm-hmm. So if you're not athletic and you don't have that ability, like it makes it really tough for you because you didn't see Rice separate hardly at all at USC. There's so many contested catches that are happening. I don't love him. He is a late round pick for me.
I don't know that he'll be late round. I could see him being third or fourth round.
I would have him in
what's going to help?
Take him on day 3, man.
Well, fourth round would be a day 3 guy. So
yeah, that is day 3 now. Yeah, 4, 5, 6,
2 and 3 rounds. 2 and 3 are day 2, and 4 and the rest are all day 3. The thing that's going to help Brendan Rice out, and like you said, he could stick on a team as like a 4 or 5, is there's upside potential. Maybe he has a little bit of his dad in him or something like that, and he can develop. But he also has a decent amount of experience on special teams as a returner. And as a guy who's 6'3", 210, where you can get some work out of him as a receiver if need be, he could absolutely fit on a team as a returner, especially with these new return rules where you could get a little bit more usage out of him there as well. So I think that, he isn't going to be a number 1, number 2, or even a top end who'd be a number 3 on a team if he hits on everything, because he's that kind of average athlete. But I think that he could work good as a 4 or 5 and a returner in the league. And then other than that, another guy that I am a fan of, small dude, Malik Washington out of Virginia.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Anthony Gould, man.
No. I mean, I have thoughts on Gould, but I got him later as well, 5th, 6th round type guy. But Malik Washington, I think, is a guy who's going to fall closer to pick 100 or later, 4th round probably, because he's 5'8", 194. He's a small guy, but he is a high volume receiver as well, like a really, really good slot if he reaches his potential. He had almost 1,400 yards this year and 9 touchdowns on 111 receptions. So he was a majority of that receiving offense there. I really like the skills and stuff that he has there. I don't believe he got invited to the Senior Bowl. He was at the Shrine Bowl, but he was a standout there at the Shrine Bowl. So he's going to drop down a lot because of his size. But I think that he has the capability of becoming a really good, he's got the capability of becoming a really good slot receiver in the NFL.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't have any other guys. I don't have any other names to bring up.
You don't want to talk about Luke McCaffrey?
Okay, you know what? Fuck it. Let's talk about Luke McCaffrey. Luke McCaffrey had a chance to go and build a legacy at a school, but he didn't get what he liked, so he fucking left and whined and bitched and cried and complained. And then he switched positions because he couldn't get his playing time that he wanted as a quarterback. And he's also not very good as a wide receiver. What he should have done was stop being entitled and fucking compete. And that's how I feel about McCaffrey. I was trying to not be an asshole and bury people, and you made me do it, Evo. You fucking made me do it.
Absolutely. Hey, look, he's playing at lower competition, Rice Owls. He did okay there. And your people are going to bet on the heritage a little bit, I think.
This one would be a bad bet. This one would be a bad fucking bet.
I think he's okay as a 5th or 6th round type of pick.
You only bring him in as a flyer.
Oh, he's going to get drafted. He's going to get drafted.
Because his name's McCaffrey.
Sure.
His dad wasn't drafted, and everybody missed. They're like, oh, my God, we can't ever let that happen again. His fucking brother is possibly the best running back in the league. The only reason I say possibly is because Nick Chubb didn't get to play last year, so not a fair fight. So, yeah, of course, the legacy, he's going to get drafted. I wouldn't fucking take him. I don't want him.
I don't have as much vitriol or anything against him as you do, but that's why I don't get as overly hyped up about the legacy stuff as some people do, and I would think that the NFL doesn't as much either, unless the guy actually shows that he's got some good talent, like a Jonah Ellis, a defensive end, dad played and stuff like that. That's how I kind of see like he could go to a team like the Lions that is going to feel good about bringing him in. But Jonah Ellis also has a lot of upside and a lot of talent and showed that in college. Whereas Luke McCaffrey, again, small school, and he wasn't
started as a quarterback in Nebraska, was not a good quarterback. Tried to move him into another role at Nebraska. It didn't work. He wasn't going to get the things that he wanted in Nebraska, so he fucking transfers. Barely makes any kind of a dent at Rice, and now we're here. Like, I don't know. He's going to get drafted because his name is McCaffrey.
Yeah.
But I'm going to hit up Coach, and I'm going to ask him if he feels the same way that I feel. See if I can get him on at least a little something.
Sure. Alrighty. And that's kind of it for our wide receivers. Look, like I said, I listed off 25 names there, including guys that I didn't really like a Devontae Walker and a Keon Coleman. Those are guys that are going to be going probably no later than the 3rd round, in my opinion. And that makes for one of the most jam-packed wide receiver drafts that we've been looking at. Look, you take out those top 3 guys, and we still have a really good, strong wide receiver group of a lot of guys that are going to be potentially day 1 contributors on their teams. So through the 2nd and 3rd round, you're getting potential day 1 contributors, guys that you should feel excited about getting on your squads, because in other years they're absolutely 2nd round picks or higher.
If you're in need of a premier defender, this is the year to need one as well, especially if you're in the middle in the middle of the draft.
Yeah.
The top end of this draft, there's going to be 7 or 8, 9 guys from the offensive side of the ball goes in the top 10.
Well, yeah, by most accounts, people don't really have a defensive player going until pick 9, maybe at the Bears, and even then, that's not a guarantee. So,
you might not have to take the best defender in this draft until past 10.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but I'm super excited for it. It's going to be.
I think that we've established before the show that we're going to try to live stream the draft. We're probably going to get a little liquored up, and
Yeah, I already am planning on making sure that I don't have any sort of work constraints or anything like that. And I believe my thought process is that I'm going to get myself a case of Busch Light to have sitting here next to me.
Busch lattes.
While we sit here and watch the draft. And obviously we aren't going to be able to display the draft to you, but that's, we're giving you fair warning right now. If you don't have a second screen or another TV lying around, have the draft on one TV and us on the other, or us on your phone or something like that. Just be prepared for it. We're going to be live. It is going to, while the Cleveland Browns do not currently have a first round pick, and I guess you never know, my Vikings absolutely have a pick. We're hard up on the drafts regardless. And they're going to have a lot of takes on things. But there's a lot of volatility with my team in particular. And while I don't necessarily have too many emotional outbursts on the podcast, it is very high potential that we could have positive emotional outbursts and negative emotional outbursts from my side. And so, hopefully I don't put any holes in walls or anything like that. But
that would be fucking hilarious for the program.
You can expect that we will be live during the 2024 NFL draft.
Yeah. And it starts on Thursday, so I know I don't have any obligations the next day. So I'm pumped. I'm going to get so elevated during the draft. Oh, man. All right, let's get the fuck out of here. Guys, this is the Lineman Lounge. I'm Mike. That is Evo. We are here every single week. We're going to take you up all the way to the draft as well. If you want to enjoy this content in written form, go to our website, nosleevesnetwork.com. It's going to have writings from me, Evo. We're going to try to get additional people on there as well. I think Matt is already is going to get signed up. He's going to write some blogs as well. And then if you want to interact with us on social media, go over to the Facebook. We have a group at Lineman Lounge on Twitter or X. TikTok is Lineman Lounge 2.0. Check that out while TikTok's still allowed to be in the United States. And you can basically go to any social media platform. You'll find content there. Guys, thank you very much. Thank you for spending time with us. Anytime you do, cannot thank you enough. Time is the most valuable thing that you have. Evo, give the people one last word, and we'll get the fuck out of here.
Keon Coleman is overrated.
I agree. Guys, this is the Lineman Lounge. I'm Mike. That's Evo. We're getting the fuck out of there. Here. See you.